President Bongbong Marcos has signed an executive order making the wearing of face masks outdoors optional.
Infectious diseases expert Edsel Salvania says making mask wearing optional outdoors is a calculated risk for the government.
As long as maganda yung vaccination rates natin, hopefully ma-push pa natin itong boosting, this is a calculated risk. And what we're doing is we're going to watch, lalo na pinag-uusapan yung sa indoor. Kung maging matagumpay itong sa outdoor, bakit hindi? Bakit hindi natin i-pilot? Pero if it doesn't work, siguro retreat muna tayo.
And provincial governments are seeking guidance from the Health Department in determining which areas can be considered non-crowded.
Siguro kami sa mga LGUs, we will of course align with national guidelines, no? Kung ano nga ba yung safe. Doon tayo, yun ang implement namin.
Local government units are still waiting for clearer guidelines on how to go about implementing the voluntary mask policy. One concern is monitoring crowded areas, including schools. With face-to-face classes ongoing and becoming mandatory come November, how can we keep students protected in and outside the classrooms? We discuss in this episode of The Chiefs. Welcome to The Chiefs. Ako po si Roby Alampay at kasama ko po ngayon online Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star. She's joining us from the PhilStar office in Manila. Ami, happy Tuesday. So, nakamute ka pa yata, Ami.
Okay, good evening.
Yan. Welcome to The Chiefs, Ami. Anong balita? Teka muna, birthday pala ng ating Pangulo ngayong araw.
Kaya happy birthday, Tuesday, happy Tuesday, no? Marami siyang activity the whole day at meron siyang mahabang interview, di ba? So, nipip yung amortization. Well, suspended for 1 year yung amortization for agrarian lands. Yung isa sa malaki.
Matatanda natin, pinangako niya naman yan sa State of the Nation address niya pa lang, di ba? Ano pang mga naganap ngayong araw na to?
Well, may mga pinakawalan ng mga PDLs, although sabi nila hindi naman daw yun in line with the birthday. Tapos, hindi ba, inutusan din ng NTC yun. Maraming interesado dyan. Inutusan yung mga telcos na tanggalin daw yung mga personal links na ginagamit ng mga scammer sa text. So tingnan natin kung uubrehan. Ang dami-dami po mga text spam dito sa cellphone ko.
Oo nga. Kasi in the meantime, kanina, speaking still of the birthday of President Marcos, he spent the day today with the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, with the agriculture officials as well. And another thing that he touched on in his State of the Nation address, climate change. Spent the day actually planting trees, calling for reforestation efforts to be ramped up.
Itutuloy daw niya yung drug war pero may pagbabago sa strategy, which is actually in line with what the PNP is saying.
Which is what? Ano exactly yung bagong nabanggit niya?
Well, parang siguro mostly in reaction yun sa sinabi ni Senator Bato dati, di ba? Wala daw asim at walang arrive yung law enforcement ngayon. So medyo mas may focus daw ngayon on rehabilitation.
So
it's a gentler, I guess. It's a gentler type of law enforcement.
Yes, and gentler and also more holistic, as people and critics had been saying, especially during the time of President Duterte, treat it not just as a crime problem, but more importantly, as a public health concern for everyone. Now, of course, during the day, we've also been speaking to this continuing, concern, anxiety, even excitement about itong bagong mandates natin sa face mask, di ba? Making it mandatory, but still some confusion there. That we'll be talking about that, the impacts in our schools, the impact in our workplace, but we'll speak to all of that later on. We will have our first guest after this quick break. Keep it right here on One News. The Chiefs will be right back. After 2 years of online learning, Filipino students are just getting the hang of face-to-face classes. But with the optional mask rule now in effect, safety and sticking to health protocols are becoming concerns. Let's bring Pasig Representative Roman Romulo into this conversation. He's also chairman of the Committee on Basic Education. Congressman Romulo, welcome to the Chiefs.
Yes, good evening, Sir Roby, Ma'am Ami. Good evening po at everyone who's listening and watching for the program. Good evening to everyone.
Good evening.
And of course, we're talking about the new protocols with you specifically. We want to talk about our children. Of course, it's a rapidly and suddenly changed world for school children, especially kanina binanggit ko, they're starting to, sabi nga dito, binasa ko, they're starting to get the hang of face-to-face classes. But knowing children, walang getting the hang. Instant yun. Adjust ka agad. Bata, naglalaro ka agad. And that's how I would imagine the scenes. And the real question now is, how do we keep up with the behaviors of children? What are you seeing from your vantage point, sir, especially you're on the Committee on Basic Education? What are the pain points? What are the promises? What are we seeing with back to face-to-face classes?
Actually, Sir Roby, a few months ago, nag-pilot na po kami dito sa lungsod ng Pasig ng face-to-face. In fact, sa Pasig Elementary School, which is one of our biggest elementary schools, pumasok po dyan yung mga grades 1 to 3, yung voluntary basis. At alam niyo po, Sir Roby, Ma'am Ami, nung nag-pilot po dyan ng face-to-face, makita po ninyo talaga yung tuwa ng estudyante nung nakapasok sila. In fact, most of them siguro, especially yung grades 1, 2, and 3 that time, first time nila makita ulit yung classroom after, yung grade 3 siguro after 2 years, pero yung grades 1 and 2, that would have been the first time that they saw the physical classroom kasi 2 years na rin po na nawala. Pero nakita po talaga yung excitement po sa mga bata. Makita mo, very visible yung excitement nila sa pagpasok. That's why itong pagpasok natin sa face-to-face, actually, Sir Roby, Ma'am Ami, talagang kailangan po natin bumalik, especially for grades 1 to 3. Alam po natin lahat na, even before the pandemic, nandun na yung results nung SEA PLM, TIMS, and of course yung PISA examination. And that was all pre-pandemic. And nakita po natin na hindi maganda yung ating showing dun sa mga international assessments exam na yon. At lahat naman tayo, including po yung experts sa education, everyone agrees. It's all about reading. We must be able to ensure that reading comprehension is there. Our students learn how to read and they understand what they are reading. And of course, yung basic mathematics. Ang sabi nga sa atin ng mga eksperto, di ba? Phonetics ang key for one to be able to read and understand properly. Ang problema kung hindi face-to-face, paano yung phonetics? Yung modules will never show the sounds because the child must hear paano bigkasin bawat letra, bawat salita, paano sila pinagsasama-sama. Modules will never show that. Alam ko may distance learning, pero in distance learning po, erratic rin po naman talaga yung ating Wi-Fi, even Metro Manila. So, kahit gano'ng kagaling yung teacher mo, kahit gano'ng kagaling yung estudyante, with an erratic Wi-Fi, ang hirap po talaga ng phonetics. That's why talagang we must go back to face-to-face. And everything naman parang sa akin po, na baka right time First, a month, 2 months ago, in-announce na po ng DepEd. November 2, mandatory face-to-face. Before that, yung start natin August 22, it will be parang alternate muna, parang may online, may face-to-face, para matest yung motion of how we will have the face-to-face. And I think that was a good idea that they announced early because it gave the students, the parents, the teachers, even the non-teaching personnel, time to adjust it and to get used na by November 2, face-to-face tayo. It also gave parents the time to decide kung hindi pa vaccinated po, including the children. They gave them time to ask yung mga tiwala nilang doktor o eksperto, safe ba, effective ba? Kung maniwala sila, then vaccination is there. Kung hindi naman, at least we'll give them enough time to ensure na yung minimum health protocols ay masusunod. Ngayon, tama ho kayo, Sir Roby, sa amin naman now, ay nag-recommend yung IATF and na-approve naman na optional na yung face mask pagdating sa outdoors. And I think it recognizes the fact that this pandemic is here. It's not going to go away that easily. And government, local, national, will not be able to solve it by themselves. Talagang it's a whole of nation approach. We need each one of us talaga to be able to decide for ourselves, because lalo na tayong mga Pilipino, I think we are smart enough to know what is good for us, what is good for our family, what is good for our children. So itong optional wearing of face mask sa labas, I think gives us an option. But it also may give us that even parents, makakapag-decide tayo. Sabi nga ng DOH, I was reading the statement of DOH. You must be able to judge for yourself as a parent, as an individual, kung safe ba talaga yung outdoors tayo. Pero ang daming tao, masyado magkakalapit pa rin.
Okay, but
siguro naman, you will have to make that decision also na you will also have to adjust by yourself. And sabihin mo, hindi naman siguro safe to. So now it gives us time to adjust.
Congressman, thank you for that overview. But let's break it down into parts.
Yes.
There's the developmental aspects that we want the children to benefit from going back face-to-face. And then, but more basic is yung implications nung pandemya pa rin. No? You mentioned yung pilot sa Pasig. What were the learnings there in terms of the risks for children just being back with each other physically?
Well, sa totoo, Sir Roby, I think that pilot face-to-face was really meant to help everyone adjust again to going back. Kasi sa totoo lang, nagka-fear rin talaga ang lahat including, lalo ng parents, siguro yung children, hindi naman children will by nature be fun-loving, parang sa kanila everything is, talaga namang sa kanila, they will just follow the lead of their parents, their guardians, yun naman ang totoo. But it gave that opportunity to parents, to even teaching, non-teaching personnel, the schools, to be able to get comfortable again, to going back to school, to seeing how the protocols work. In that sense, I think that was the main purpose for that. And I think in a way that achieved a lot. Kasi kahit pa paano, yung comfort level nababalik unti-unti. Hindi naman naging po yan. That was just pilot face-to-face and voluntary yon. And in fact, a very small number lang of students were allowed to, at the time, to go back physically to school. So talagang that was confident for me. That was confidence building, and I think that worked. And I think because of that, itong August 22 opening, and then November 2 yung mandatory face-to-face, again gives everyone the time to. Kasi kailangan talaga 2 years not going face-to-face, 2 years hearing the risk of contracting COVID-19, and alam natin, we all had friends who hindi masyado maganda yung nangyari sa kanila when they got COVID. So talagang naturally may fear talaga ang lahat ng individual. So all these things talagang kailangan natin ng confidence building to get back on track, to get back to our regular lives. It won't be the same obviously kasi nandito pa rin naman yung COVID-19. But it gives a sense of comfort the moment you take one step at a time, moving closer to where we were pre-pandemic. In the sense na yung fear kahit paano ay namamanage natin individually.
Congressman, is just a first step in the return to normal sa education, no? Pero
Yes.
napakalaki nang nawala talaga dito the past 2 years. Even both learners and educators are saying the same thing. Na marami talagang naiwanan, pati yung mga magagaling nun nahirapan What measures are you hoping to see para manaraw yung gap na yon in the learning?
Actually, Ma'am Ami, that is true. I guess we cannot deny the fact na iba talaga pag face-to-face. Mas effective po talaga yan. And since hindi naman tayo nagka-face-to-face ng 2 taon, it doesn't, kahit pa paano, I'm sure nagka-effect yan. But let's also face reality and face the factual situation. Even pre-pandemic, medyo may problema na rin po talaga because the PISA was taken before the pandemic, the SEA PLM was also taken before the pandemic, and so was the TIMSS examination. But ang nangyari naman po sa atin during this pandemic, I think it gave us all that opportunity to be able to assess, talk to each other, and now we hit the ground running. I think I've been holding committee meetings every day. I think ideas have been coming out. Let me give you an example, ma'am. For one, we want to ensure now that we have a good amount of the right number of guidance counselors, psychometricians, or allied services as a guidance counselor to ensure na mapangalagaan hindi lang naman yung mental wellness ng students pati ng teaching and non-teaching personnel. Now we are also talking about today in the committee, and I think the Senate they've already began I think a week ago to emphasize now on these bridging programs for us to emphasize reading, and basic mathematics. What we want is to now during this pandemic we found out that kita naman po natin talaga na overloaded naman po talaga yung subjects natin from grades 1 to 3. Second, some of the innovations that were supposed to that were introduced by K to 12, I think we will be reviewing this like yung spiral method na ginawa nila for our sciences. I think these 2 years gave a lot of those in the education sector time to consider, think, and move forward. That's why we've been holding these committee meetings. We will have an education summit soon so that we are able to adjust in order to ensure that quality education is provided. Yun naman talagang gusto natin. Pero, Ma'am Ami, talagang the reality is marami tayong kailangan gawin.
Yeah.
Even without the pandemic hitting us. Marami tayong kailangan gawin na adjustment.
Congressman,
Do you see any positive aspect dito sa nangyari the past 2 years? Halimbawa, the migration to online. Yung napilitan ng mga bata na matuto ng computers. May nakikita ba kayo dyan positive takeaway from the past?
Yes, Ma'am Ami, in fact, pre-pandemic pa lang, in fact, Congresses ago, there have been several proposals with respect to yung technology development in our public schools. And now because of the pandemic, sa totoo lang sobrang dami ang nag-file, and in fact we passed it already in the committee, yung public schools of the future in technology. But Ma'am Ami, because I guess of this pandemic, natuto rin tayo na we cannot rush into just providing laptops and computers to each and every student because may capacity building na kailangan mangyari. So under this proposed bill, ang sinasabi natin, DepEd, DICT, together with the Philippine Space Agency, they should first create a roadmap. Kasi kailangan natin malaman first, capacitated ba ang teachers natin sa technology? Capacitated ba ang bawat estudyante? Pangatlo po, we also included the DSWD. Bakit po? Pagdating ng technology po, we know na nangyayari yung bullying. So we want guidelines to be set with the help of DSWD and other DOH and other concerned agencies. Ang gusto natin, roadmap muna. Let's go small steps. Anyway po, the moment we get capacitated, exponential yung growth po niyan. It will not be like in 1 year, sabihin natin, one school per province. Pero the moment we get the system going, exponential naman po ang growth niyan. So wag natin i-rush yung beginnings because that roadmap is so important. Especially, kanina nga, sinabi namin sa committee sa DepEd to coordinate with the Philippine Space Agency, with the DICT. Kailangan po natin ng school mapping of the whole country to determine, we have about 47,000 public schools, about 12,000 private schools. Pero itong mga lugar na ba nito, sino ba ang cover talaga ng internet, ng Wi-Fi? Kasi madali kasing magbigay ng, sa totoo lang po, di ba? Madali talagang sabihin natin, bigyan natin ng lahat, computers na lahat, but it has to be something that that we follow a roadmap. Kailangan lagi ho talagang meron tayong sinusundan para yung sabihin na natin maayos yung paglatag natin para hindi rin masayang yung taxpayers' money. Kaya yun naman po ang gusto natin. We have to have, in that sense po, I think that perspective was given to all of us during this pandemic na nakita natin, we wanted online. Pero nakita natin kahit sa Metro Manila, hindi lahat maganda yung Wi-Fi. In fact, erratic in some parts of Metro Manila. So talagang importante po yung school mapping na ito. It's something that DepEd, DICT, the Philippine Space Agency should not take lightly. Kasi sayang po we have this opportunity na we want technological improvements in our DepEd schools. But we have to do it the right way.
Congressman, you mentioned roadmap. Let's talk about baseline as well. Kanina nabanggit nyo nga yung PISA. That was dismaying when it first came out, but the education officials were saying, pero importante ito baseline to. Unfortunately, we set that baseline before the pandemic, and the pandemic was an additional aggravator and handicap on our children. You talked about the bridging program. Before we talk about the roadmap, could you give us an idea on where our baseline is right now? I mean, what are our metrics to indicate, not if it's progress, then that's great, but relative to where we were nung lumabas yung PISA, where are our children right now?
Yes. Actually, Sir Roby, I think this is also part of the question of Ami that I want to add to the earlier discussion. We have a proposal called the Aral Bill. I think this has been filed in the Senate by Senator Win. We are following suit, in fact, here in Congress. Dito po, ang sinasabi po natin, ang first and initial step dito is to create a baseline of the learnings of where we are with our students, and kailangan rin po natin ng baseline for our teachers. If you recall, nung March of this year, the Excellence in Education Act was passed and signed into law by then President Duterte. And under this law, we institutionalized the NEAP in Baguio City. The NEAP is the National Educators Academy of the Philippines. This is where upskilling should emanate for our teachers, both from the public and the private sector. So, ang sinasabi po natin dito sa Aral Bill, we have to create a baseline, an assessment examination, both for the student and the teachers. Kailangan po alam natin kung saan pareho, because the student po, from there, we can now tailor fit, depending po sa student, or the outcomes, yung bridging programs for them. Second, sa teachers naman, NEAP now can start tailor fitting po yung upskilling na ginagawa ng NEAP sa Baguio, which they can disseminate to the regions. Para alam rin natin how upskilling must happen both kasi po from the perspective of our students, the bridging program, and also our teachers. Kasi upskilling would include po for our teachers yung technology. Technology po, ako personally po, it's not that easy for me. I never really learned technology. So, ang sinasabi ko for us na medyo mas adult, siguro kailangan rin natin ng upskilling dito. And that's where the Aral Bill, which hopefully we can pass soon, will play a role in order for us to ask the Department of Education to have a baseline for both our students and our teachers.
Congressman, you mentioned K-12. As early as 2016, sinabi nyo na hindi yata tayo ready pa for that. Anong assessment nyo so far? The implementation, kasi it's suspended, hindi naman suspended, it's under review, no? Well, kayo, personally, your assessment on the implementation?
Well, actually, Ma'am Ami, it's continuing until now, yung K-12. Ang adjustment lang na nangyari po dyan, pre-pandemic, there were about 15,000 plus competencies required under the K-12. Ang ginawa po ng DepEd ni Secretary Briones, but this was pre-pandemic, pinag-aralan nila, ang ginawa po nila, instead of 15,000 plus competencies na tingin nila masyadong marami rin, binaba nila to a little more than 5,000 of them, what they call the most essential learning competencies. Pero totoo yan, Ma'am Ami, I have always said na tingin ko yung implementation po, medyo hilaw, we passed the law in 2013. From 2013 to 2016, I think that was the time wherein most of this preparation should have happened. Pero apparently po, again po, I wouldn't really know. But 2016, when it was implemented, medyo talagang hindi tama. First of all, even school classrooms pa lang kulang na. In fact, Ma'am Ami, the records will show 2015, in Congress, I was chair of higher education then. I was in fact asking that it not be implemented 2016 for the very simple reason na I could not understand why in 2013 they proposed to implement it in 2016 when we all knew that was a presidential election year. So obviously magkakaroon ng change in leadership even in the Department of Education. So, paano yung continuity nun? But then, again, it still happened. They did not want to postpone. So, napagpatuloy po yun under the law. Again po, we're here now. You're right, Ma'am Ami. We will have an education summit. We will review the whole curriculum, the education sector. But we, offhand po, I'm being honest with you, I already have proposals. And last Congress, we began already. Because Ma'am Ami, we have 4 tracks when you reach senior high school. Maganda po yun eh. The intention was good eh. You have an academic track, you have a sports track, you have an arts and design track, and you have a tech voc track. Pero ang problema, aminin natin talagang totoo, and I don't want to offend anyone, but ampaw talaga po yung ibang track. That's why almost everyone still went to the academic track. Ang thinking po noon, mga 52% ang pupunta sa academic track, about 30% ang pupunta sa tech voc track, and about 20% masishare na po yan ng arts and design and sports. Kasi marami naman talaga tayo magagaling sa arts and design and sports. Pero in reality po, less than 1% went into arts and design, less than 2% went into the sports track. The tech voc track at about 30+% as they wanted. Pero ang problema po nun, sa totoo po, there was no implementation, proper implementation or guidance for proper implementation. Sa totoo po yan, the principals of our DepEd schools were the ones who would go to the different industries within the sphere of, or beside the jurisdiction of their school. Sila po yung nakikiusap. Mali po yun. First of all, that destroys, that lessens the dignity of a teacher, that lessens the dignity of a principal. Dapat po, na-set up yan. That's why ang proposal po natin, in the sports track po, we created the sports system, wherein we asked now that a board be formed composed of DepEd and the Philippine Sports Commission. Yung curriculum po, dapat silang dalawa ang gumawa. Una, yung academic track na 50%, kasi kailangan pa rin po ng functional literacy. We cannot let go of that until grade 12, until magkolehiyo sila. So that is DepEd. Pero yung 50% po, dapat Philippine Sports Commission ang gumawa ng curriculum, depending on the track, on the particular sport that will be introduced in that school. Secondly po, dapat payagan po natin magturo doon yung sa sports track, yung sa sports portion of the curriculum, yung ating mga athletes, coaches, trainers, because kawawa po yung academician po, pinapaturo po natin ng sports, pinag-aralan po niya nung collegiate and design track. Ang proposal po namin is, instead of an arts and design track, we now call it the creative arts system track, wherein 50% again will be crafted by the DepEd, but 50% po, let's invite naman po the NCCA, yung mga national museum po natin, really and let's allow national artists, actors, yung mga director po natin, depending again on what to be able to teach. Because they will also serve as an inspiration. Sa Tech Voc po, ang sinasabi natin, we create a board for the Tech Voc track, kasama po ng DepEd again for the 50% of the curriculum. Pero the other portion po, dapat nandyan ang DTI and nandyan ang TESDA. DTI, so that DTI can plot each school po, ano ba yung mga industries na nakapaligid dito. And then, pag na-identify ng DTI yan, TESDA comes in and creates a program. Ano yun ang natitrain natin. So now it becomes more encouraging. Alam mo, importante kasi yung mga estudyante natin from K to 12, talagang kailangan po ma-instill yung love for learning. But sadly po, maybe our curriculum did not encourage that. So we must adjust it so that yung love for learning from kinder to 12, andyan
Congressman, nabanggit niyo yung education summit, no, where you're very eager to bring up all of these points. I-throw in ko na rin. What about medium of instruction? Your proposal there, where do you stand on English, Filipino, and mother tongue?
Yes. Under the K-12 law, it says that from K to 3, kailangan mother tongue. Again, para to avoid confusion, when we talk about mother tongue, as also discussed earlier in the committee meeting, hindi po national language ito. Mother tongue is simply that dialect or language spoken in the home of a particular student. Ang sinasabi ko po, nung minandato nung K-12 law, na dapat sa K-3 ay mother tongue, hindi ba dapat ang una nilang ginawa ay may baseline, gumawa ng language mapping? Kasi po ang ginawa nila, they started mentioning studies done abroad in a particular place dito sa Pilipinas, wherein it's really one language or one dialect. Kung one language lang o one dialect, walang question. I think that will work. Pero ang problema po, the Philippines has about 119 or 120 dialects already. The DepEd KWF has identified 19 major dialects. So, pagka ganun po, bakit hindi muna from 2013 to 2016, bakit hindi sila gumawa ng language mapping? Kailangan po, of the 47,000 DepEd schools, hindi ba dapat tinignan muna po nila ano ba ang mother tongue dyan?
Yeah.
Because even, Bicol po, Bicol has about 4. So ang question ko, hindi naman pwede yung majority lang. Paano yung estudyante na hindi yun yung mother tongue niya? Also, Sir Roby, Ma'am Ami, paano yung teacher? I never heard from 2013 to 2016 of any talk of capacitating teachers with respect to the mother tongue. Because, again, teaching is very difficult.
Yeah.
And then you're going to teach in a language other than, I guess, as mentioned earlier, what they were used to when they studied academics in college. So, ang point po, dapat na from that 2013 to 2016, dapat hindi ba nag-prepare ng gusto even capacitating teachers? And Sir Roby, Ma'am Ami, ito nga ang question ko sa DepEd. Will that not limit the choices of Filipino citizens? Paano po kung taga Maynila ka, nakita mo na you have a job opportunity, mapupunta ka sa Ilocos Norte. Syempre, dadali mo yung buong pamilya mo kung nandun ka. Ang problema, yung mga anak mo, hindi naman yun yung mother tongue. Pagdating ngayon doon, yung salita will be that mother tongue, hindi naman mother tongue ng anak mo. So, hindi ba paano kung gusto mo magturo? Gusto mo magturo gusto mo talagang tumulong, may nakita kang Rio na tingin mo kailangan doon ka magturo dahil kulang ang teachers doon. But that was not the province that you came from. Paano kung hindi mo alam yung mother tongue doon? So, paano ka pupunta doon? Ang sinasabi ko po, wala tayong problema if we're talking about indigenous people. Pag IP po, talagang walang question yan. Yan talagang, it has to be the mother tongue that they're used to. Kasi yun, identifiable yun.
Congressman, sorry to interrupt. Sorry po to interrupt. Kaya lang now we're almost out of time. Meron ako isang general question na lang because I think our viewers can understand everything and appreciate all the points that you're raising. Even the questions. I think we all have the same questions. Bakit ganun? Ba't hindi ginawa to? And so on. Ito basic question na lang. A lot of it also does, I think, boil down, I think it's fair to say, boil down as well to implementation. The intention is good, is nice, pero bakit ganyan tayo pagka may magandang batas? Ang implementation ganito, may kulang, there seems to be something missing in the methodology, and so on. But every time we see that gap, and this is my general question for everything, every time we see a gap, do we need to take another law? Does it take another law or 2 more laws or another law for every gap? Or is there a better, more efficient way to just fill in these gaps, to plug these loopholes, and to implement better?
Yes. Again, Sir Roby, to depend, kung if the particular challenge is something that we all know kailangan na nating i-adjust because hindi talaga tama yung unang methodology, I think if it's a law, we have to amend that. Pero kung hindi naman kailangan po naman ng adjustment via a law or an amendment via a law, kasi implementation lang purely po ang mangyari dyan. Example, kunyari ang pinag-uusapan lang naman natin is simply yung curriculum, kunyari yung K-3. Yung K-3 po, they have about, sa grade 1 pa lang, you have about 7 subjects. Again, if we just want to lessen the subjects, I don't think you need a law for that. But we can, of course, ask the Department of Education to take a look and just to emphasize reading, functional literacy lang, and of course, yung GMRC, because talagang we have to equip our students, our youth, kasi talagang technology also exposes them to some negatives, diba? That's a possibility. So I think GMRC goes a long way. Katulad po yun, kung hindi naman kailangan, but it's a case-to-case basis hindi naman pwedeng sweeping rin. Just as you said po, hindi naman kailangan pag may batas, amend tayo, pag may tingin natin mali. Tama yun, hindi ganun rin ang sinasabi natin. Ang sinasabi natin, meron pwedeng ma-adjust through implementation na lang po talaga ng ating education sector. Pero meron din na kailangan rin talaga natin gawa ng batas because mandatory under a current law.
Okay, Congressman Roman Romulo, sir, maraming salamat po.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Sir Roby, Ma'am Aming. Thank you.
Pasig Representative Roman Romulo, he's also chairman of the Committee on Basic Education at the House of Representatives. And we will start up another conversation after the break. Please stay with us. You're still watching the Chiefs. Earlier, we talked about the impact of the new mandates and for including the relaxed mask rule on schools, sa kalakalan, in work, in the private sector, in our businesses. Let's ask our next guest who joins us live via Zoom, Sergio Ortiz-Luis Jr. He is the president of the Employers Confederation of the Philippines and honorary chair of the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Welcome to the Chief, sir.
Good evening, and to you, Roby and Ami, and to your watchers. TV.
Good evening ulit po. Kanina nakausap ko si Mr. Ortiz-Luis sa The Big Story, and we were talking about ito nga, mandatory, hindi na, optional na ang masking. People are starting to open up. We're talking about how do we strike a balance sa workplace, kung 70-30 or do we mandate it. But sir, let's go to itong relaxed rules on the use of face masks. Ano po yung immediate implications niyan sa mga workplaces natin and for our employers for that matter?
Well, I hardly any implication because una na, there is no cost implication. Napakamura na lang nung mask na yan, no? Plus, there's no danger or inconvenience using it. Unlike this face shield before, which poses danger to construction workers and even drivers. But itong mask, it is not a problem at all.
But any concerns about COVID, about the pandemic? People have kept safe. They have developed the habit. Nonetheless, this will encourage many people to rethink that habit. They may find it more convenient and so on. Meron po ba kayong nakikitang mga risk doon?
Well, the risk really is can they implement what is really the order? The order is voluntary for open spaces and for those who have no immunocompromised and who are not seniors, but they are still required in closed spaces. So, number one, what is the definition of open space? What is the definition of where they are supposed to be? And would the LGUs be inclined to have a uniform way to implement this? Will the implementer, our policemen, will they have the capacity to be able to implement this? I doubt very much yung communication ability natin to be able to do this. And the problem is we do not intend to make this the mask not voluntary for everywhere, but that is what will happen. Because before, if you go out of the house, you forget your mask, you go back and get your mask. Now, I don't think you will go back. You will just say, oh, anybody, a lot of people are walking in the streets without mask. No? And the problem is, if you go out without mask and you see others not using the mask, chances are when you go out, you go to a closed space. Hardly will you go out just to be in open spaces. So, and people will not bother bringing their mask anymore, because I think the capacity to accept the fact that this is not for everywhere and for everyone will not sink in that easy. So we might have spikes because we are not able to implement the mask where they should still be used.
Mr. Ortiz-Luis, your group represents MSMEs, no? Many of your members are MSMEs. How is business
Yes.
recovery coming along?
Well, now, this is not related to the mask, no? The business is going well. I think it's continuously growing, not in the pace that you would like it to be, because time by time there are problems that come up, inflation, transportation problem, shipping problem for exporters and importers, shipping problems also, traffic. These are things that very hard to comprehend, you know, for one of businessmen. So the growth, which should be continuous, is not that fast.
What about the impact of the weak peso? Because of course, it's impacting the cost of fuel, a lot of imports. Yung mga members niyo, of course, are also marami din dyan importers. Anong impact nun?
Well, in the past, in the 60s, 70s, most of us rely on the peso, the strength of the peso. But medyo nagbaligtad na yung situation, no? We have what? 10 million, 12 million OFWs earning dollars, and multiply that to a family of 5, no? That is majority of the Filipinos that is relying on dollars, without even counting the exporters and the allied industry of export, without even counting the tourism industry, without counting BPOs that rely on dollars. The majority of Filipinos would rather have it now a stronger dollar than peso, especially and who do not like that? Well, the importers. Many importers, big imports will be also exporters. There are two sectors in the export industry which rely on heavy imports. This will be the electronics and the garments. They basically import 70% of the raw materials, no? So talo sila when they import. But when they export, it's vast, and they earn on the value added of 30 to 40% that they have. So. And when we had a crisis before, and the OFWs was not able to earn, the peso was too strong at the time, no? Marami sa kanila na they are buying houses, lots, or they are sending people, the children to school. May mga naghinto, no? Today I understand the figure that the OFW sends about $30 billion, no? So any peso difference will be a loss of $139 billion to our OFWs. Can you imagine? the buying capacity of the 39 billion and what our OFWs can do with that money, family. So do not be worried about this trade balance. So long as it is not that quick and it's not too much, we are just trading our neighbors. Our neighbors' devaluation is higher than ours. I think Indonesia and South Korea, their devaluation is higher than ours. So if we do not devalue our peso, we will not be able to compete with them in our export. Besides, I think there is a way really of computing the real exchange rate. No? There is a formula. We applied that before, and the peso always comes out to be always undervalued. No? So dapat yan. Ako, I'm just guessing. I have not we have not used that formula again recently. But I think if you use the real exchange rate, it will not be lower than 58. And sino ba natatalo? The importers. Hopefully, they're importers of luxury goods, cars, mga fruits that compete with our fruits, things like that. So, and the government, to a certain degree, because our loans, the prepayment is higher. On the other hand, lumalakas naman ang kita sa customs because mataas yung presyo ng mga imports and they are assessed tariff on the basis of the exchange rate.
Ay, Mr. Ortiz-Luis, balik ko naman po ng konti ulit doon sa relaxed mandates, the new protocols, and really, in general, government trying to signal to everyone na go back to work, okay na yan, we need you out there so that also helps to spur the engine of our economy and so on. But I imagine that also creates, of course, in the workplaces, you're with the Employers Confederation of the Philippines. Ano po yung impact ng all of that? You know, on the one hand, this encouragement for people to go back. At the same time, there is still real tension, real apprehension, and there is, for some parties, also excitement with the prospect of people coming back. But there's therefore that dilemma, di ba? I'm just wondering, ano po yung impact ng lahat ng ito sa employer-employee relationships?
Well, actually, I don't think there is resistance to go back to work. No? Not from the side of the employer, neither especially on the side of the employee. Everybody wants to work. And I don't think there is any fear about this COVID now, that people are not afraid anymore. As a matter of fact, some of them will even be joking. Gusto ko na mahawa para para immune na ako. Unfortunately, it's showing that this vaccine, even this booster, does not protect anyone from getting it again, getting COVID, nor does it prevent somebody who is vaccinated from spreading it. That's what's showing. So people are more afraid, perhaps now with flu. And the other diseases than COVID.
No, but sir, are you saying that everybody's on the same page now, the employers and the kasi marami akong kilala in their workplaces where there is a real dilemma. On the one hand, the employers, for example, may want their employees back with the value of face-to-face. Maraming intangibles that we're losing pagka parating online. At the same time, some employees understanding that, but some employees also saying, oh, pero boss, mas okay talaga sa amin sa ano eh. That really is where my question is. I understand we're all on the same page when it comes to work. But working face-to-face, physically going back to work, what are the dilemmas emerging there?
Well, I think wala nang emergency and there's no real danger anymore. And I guess so long as it's not mandated, it's the choice of the employer, not the employee, who will of course choose the route of less resistance, whether they will work face to face or not. No, they were hired to work on site. They were not hired to work, except for some industries perhaps, no. But in general, we're talking manufacturing, construction, and a lot of companies. They have to be in the office, and merong a few who might find it better to work, but it's the choice where the employers feel they could be more productive.
Pero,
Mr. Ortiz-Luis, during the pandemic, there was this phenomenon. It's like, I think it was global, no? Yung mga tinamaan ng pandemya. It was called the Great Resignation. Yung mga tao na sanay na sa work from home, kumikita sila from home. Nakita din niyo ba yan in the Philippines?
Well, yes. As a matter of fact, some of the employers are complaining. They say mismatch. They say walang trabaho. Pero we advertise work that basically can be namimili pa ng trabaho yung iba. Especially yung mga some of the new graduates or kung hindi work from home, ayaw nila. But at the end of the day, they realize not many will be willing to get employees on a work from home basis.
okay, Mr. Sergio Ortiz-Luis Jr. of the Employers Confederation of the Philippines. Sir, maraming salamat po. Unfortunately, we've run out of time.
Maraming salamat sa inyo, Roby.
Thank you.
And that is it for the Chiefs. We hope what was discussed will keep the conversation going. I'm Roby Alampay.
I'm Pamintuan of the Philippine Star.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.